Hey everybody, it's Gwen here. So I over the weekend saw Chris Stuckmann's Shelby Oaks. I really liked it. I know that it is kind of a divisive film right now, uh, for reasons we'll get into. But I would like to start this video off by saying that I really like this movie. Like, it is one of the stronger feature debuts I've seen from a director. Similar to something like Saw or Get Out, which I know is kind of a bold claim, and I know there's going to be people that are going to be bickering about that, but it's true. Like, I really love Shelby Oaks. It is a movie that is very satisfyingly creepy throughout. Like, something that throughout Chris Stuckmann's career on YouTube being a movie critic, I noticed he had a very distinct uh, passion for movies that, even if they were to have jump scares, and there are like 3 or 4 jump scares in this movie, those jump scares would have to serve genuine purpose and really just kind of be like icing on top of an already really upsetting atmosphere. And that was something I was really anticipating whenever seeing him finally make a feature horror film. And whenever I saw the first trailer for Shelby Oaks, I really got a lot of that vibe. And seeing the movie in full, I'm really glad that that aspect of the film delivers fully. There's so much eeriness in not only the film's concept, but also its execution of shadows, and like its set design is just so deeply upsetting in a way. Like, if you've been to places that just feel dead, have you ever been to like an actual place in your life where like the walls and the very foundation from top to bottom just feels like whatever soul inhabited a place, if that's even possible, has just left it completely, and you're just left with a corpse of a building or of land or anything like that. I gotta say, like, Shelby Oaks really delivers on that fully. Everything about the art direction in this film feels deeply disturbed in that way that I really appreciate. And yeah, the movie wears its influences on its sleeve. I don't really get how that ever became a criticism of a work, given Quentin Tarantino is one of the most famous filmmakers of the previous generation, and pretty much all his movies are a series of homages. And not to mention, we just got Weapons this year, which is basically just a horror version of Magnolia. But I guess where Chris Stuckmann does it, it's a bad thing. But again, I will get to that in a little bit. But yes, the movie does wear its influences on its sleeve. Like, I very much saw the influence of movies like Lake Mungo and Noroi and Blair Witch Project, and the way in which it goes about its storytelling is very interesting, because like the first 15 minutes of the film are just a straight up found footage mockumentary, and all of that is handled incredibly well. Like, Chris Stuckmann talked about how he actually shot that stuff on mini DV tapes, like authentically shot on a mini DV tapes, and then like edited it on a really old school Mac movie editor, and it's all really good stuff. And I really liked everything about that. Like it's so authentically put together, and still manages to have this profound eeriness to it, but also a like kind of a quaintness if you've ever seen like really old school YouTube videos, which, granted, as someone that, you know, grew up until the point I was like 17 years old with dial-up internet, and fairly slow dial-up internet. I was not that much of a YouTube kid, but anytime I was at like a friend's house or something, we would watch YouTube videos, and they had a lot of similar feelings to what Chris Stuckmann captures in this with that stuff. And him being a YouTube kid, someone that was on this platform long before it was like kind of a media giant, you see all that influence on display in this film in such a way that really, I don't think anyone who wasn't here since very early YouTube would be able to capture. And he uses it to tell a really interesting story about internet fame, or rather infamy on the internet, and how like that can just kind of be almost like a rot setting into culture in a very similar way that a more literal rot sets into to things. Like there's this profound thing in the movie that I really like is how we see the YouTube landscape and the media landscape take advantage of this horrifying case of these YouTubers just vanishing without a trace, and then there being like a massive murder case tied to it, and all these things, like bizarre happenings and so on and so forth, and people growing cynical of it and exploiting it for, whatever, personal gain as the time goes on. And it's very interesting stuff. And as someone that has been on YouTube for a long time, even though I wasn't there from the start of it, I've seen a lot of that culture develop. And I've seen how people really lose themselves to rabbit holes and to really, really gross behaviors, and kind of denying humanity in certain ways, just because there's a shield of a computer screen and camera in between one person and the other, and you fail to see that there's actual people affected by this, on the other side of that. And this movie is so good at capturing that aspect of it. And also, Camille Sullivan and Sarah Dern are really, really good in this movie. Like Chris Stuckmann discovered Camille Sullivan in a very similar way to I did, which was in the film Hunter x Hunter, which, admittedly, I'm not the biggest fan of that movie, but I loved Camille Sullivan's performance in that film. I think that she was genuinely the best part about it. She really stood out to me as being excellent. So whenever I found out that she was in Shelby OAKS, I was very happy to see that, and I was very excited to see how Chris Stuckmann would work with her in this film. And they really bring such a very complex character to life here that is really, really good work. She gives a really haunting performance that kind of sticks with me as someone that does desperately want to have her sister back, and just kind of the ways in which she's let her own personal life and ambitions kind of deteriorate as a result of spending her life trying to find answers in regards to her sister's disappearance. And the way in which all that stuff is captured within the film is very palpable, very real. And then you get Sarah Dern as the very character herself, Riley Brennan, the disappeared girl who has a connection to the supernatural in a way that pretty much everyone around her didn't understand until it was too late. And there's so much good stuff that Sarah Dern brings to this movie, especially the final third, which I know gets a lot of criticism, but in my opinion, that final third of this film really makes it. Like, it takes this movie from a solid 7 all the way up to a 9.5 for me. Like, and it's mostly because of what Sarah Dern brings to it. There is something deeply haunting about her performance in that last third of the film, and even, throughout the rest of it, but especially that last third, that really messed me up seeing it in theaters. I was actually shaking. And I don't want to get into spoilers, but if you've seen the movie, you probably know what I'm talking about. It is one of the most upsetting reveals I've seen in a horror movie in recent memory. I gotta say, I was not expecting Chris Stuckmann to be so bold as to go to that place, but he does. It doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel manipulative. It does feel like an organic conclusion to where things would go, and it's just deeply evil in a way few horror movies really are, in my opinion. And then also, Keith David's in this movie for like one scene, and me and my friend Steve were talking about this, and also me and my fiance talked about it too, where we were just like, man, I wish there was more Keith David here, but at the same time, most perfect use of Keith David that you could possibly have in like an indie movie like this, where you just have him in for one scene to deliver some really haunting exposition. If you're going to get anyone to just walk in, deliver some exposition, and leave, Keith David's your guy.
I'm him. I've been him. I will continue to be him.
I mean, that's just a given. It's Keith David, but his scene is genuinely great. It just sent chills down my spine. It's good stuff. Yeah, I don't really know what else to get into without getting spoilers. I don't really want to get into spoilers in this video. I just kind of want to give people my takes on how I feel about this movie. And the point is, I really like it. It's one of my favorite movies of the year so far. Admittedly, I haven't seen that many 2025 movies, but out of the ones I've seen, this is ranking pretty high on the list now. I really, really loved it. And if you can go see it, please do. There's a reason why Neon and Mike Flanagan saw something in this film and picked it up and brought it into the theatrical market. Whenever Chris Stuckmann actually was not expecting this to be a theatrical film. Like, he thought he would just post this on his YouTube or that it would get some small streaming deal. But no, like, there's a reason why this movie's in theaters. It's actually deserving of that, and it's really good. Please, please, please watch it if you can. I know that people are, really hyping up Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein right now, which, God, I wish I was able to see in theaters, but it's not playing where I'm at, unfortunately. And obviously that's a movie you should go see too. But, if you have another option to go see something else, please go see Shelby OAKS. It's really worth your time, in my opinion. I know it's a divisive movie, and we're going to get into that now. Whenever we get into the divisive aspects of Shelby OAKS, some of it I understand is, horror is kind of innately divisive. I mean, for example, earlier this year, I saw Weapons. Everyone else seemed to love it. I came out of that movie absolutely loathing it. I don't know what it was. It didn't work for me. That's an entirely different discussion. But the point is that horror is kind of an innately divisive genre where people can be, struck down the middle on something. People love it or hate it or just think it's kind of mid and just kind of go on with their lives and so on and so forth. I mean, some of the greatest horror films of all time started out being pretty widely hated. And it hasn't been until over time that these films have garnered more positive reputations. And sometimes movies that had really strong reputation at first, later were not good. So obviously, there are people that just earnestly do not care for Shelby Oaks for whatever one reason or another. And that's fine. I completely get that. Film subjective. My problem comes with a very strong subculture on the internet that I've seen develop ever since Chris Stuckmann started up this Kickstarter, honestly, and especially once it was successful within like the first 36 hours. I started hearing little rumblings from people just like, oh, I know someone who read the script of this. It's not very good. This movie's pretty bad. Oh, maybe Chris Stuckmann should just stick to doing movie reviews, even though he's not really good at that either. Oh boy. And, like it started building from there. And we ended up getting into whenever this movie was showing at festivals before Neon picked it up. And some people were just like, oh, he should tell this to Zod's snapped neck. This movie's pretty bad. It's not very good. Oh, Chris can't talk shit anymore. And it's just like, it's really, really despicable shit where it's very clear that people are rooting for Chris to fail as a filmmaker. And, I remember where Neon picked up the movie and kind of gave Chris Stuckmann the opportunity to go in there and kind of clean up the movie with 3 days of reshoots. And here's the thing about that. I don't think people understand 3 days of reshoots is such a small window that is really only there for touch-ups. You do not completely go in there and restructure an entire movie in 3 days worth of reshoots. That's not possible. And I feel people who talk shit on the internet have no idea how movies are made. And it's so insanely obvious that that's the case. And then you hear Chris Stuckmann actually talk about it, and it's just like, yeah, the movie was pretty much done, and, I had abandoned the idea of doing, like, this little thing here or this little thing there, and, Neon read the script, and it's like, hey, why didn't you do that? And it's just like, well, I kind of wanted to, but we ran out of money, so couldn't do it. And so really that's why that stuff is there, is just to, add a little bit of the stuff that he was unable to do because he ran out of money. And you can tell that they spent every last dollar on this movie. They spent everything they possibly could on this film for a movie that is maybe slightly over $1 million in its final budget. Like, that's actually fucking insane whenever you watch this movie. But yeah, like, and I've continued to see takes on Twitter because, yes, I'm back on the godforsaken website. Okay, I'm on pretty much every social media website because here's the thing. All social media is garbage now. It doesn't matter where you are. Every place is full of nut jobs and bots and AI assistants. It doesn't matter. It's all the same now. That little rant aside. I was on Twitter and, saw people talking shit about this movie and, basically dragging Chris Stuckmann for no reason, just wanting him to fail. And I think that that's awful. I think that that's dog shit. Is this movie like a perfect masterpiece? No, I don't think it's possible for most feature debuts to be a perfect masterpiece. And people going into this movie with a desperate need to be willfully uncharitable, or also, this is another thing, trying so hard to be unbiased because of Chris Stuckmann's background that you then end up being more critical of something than you should probably be for a first-time feature film. It's really weird behavior. I gotta say, it's weird behavior. I don't know. I guess the lesson here is, if you review movies on the internet, be prepared for people to root for you to fail, even if you're actually a pretty good filmmaker. And I gotta say that I think Chris Stuckmann is a really, really strong young filmmaker. I see a lot of his influences, not just of other films, but with personal life experiences, like with his background of being an ex-Jehovah's Witness and, all of the horrors that come with that, I see in the film. His experience of being on YouTube ever since the early days, I see that in this film, coming across as earnestly as possible. I see his estrangement from family being shown in this movie in the most earnest way possible. Like, I see so many things from his personal voice being shown in this film with such confidence that, Mike Flanagan was an executive producer on this movie, that I didn't even see from Mike Flanagan in his earliest work. Like his first feature film, Absentia, which, keep in mind, I really love that too, is a much more amateur film than Shelby OAKS. It does not have the same confidence behind every lighting or shot choice or every writing decision. It doesn't have that same level of confidence as Shelby OAKS. And I think that Mike Flanagan saw that. I genuinely think that Mike Flanagan saw that whenever he decided to shepherd this film to a theatrical market, because filmmakers recognize filmmakers. And given that this movie has surpassed its budget, like it's well been successful enough for people to recognize that Chris Stuckmann is a filmmaker to be reckoned with in the future. I really think we're going to see more interesting films from this guy in the future. And also, on top of anything else, I just got to say, this is an absolute inspiration. I would say that this is much more inspirational to me than even like the DIY career of like someone like Damien Leone, who I also, am deeply inspired by, because, he basically built his Terrifier franchise from nothing, and now it is such an icon that Art the Clown is in fucking Fortnite. I actually have that skin, by the way. In the case of Chris Stuckmann, it's more inspirational in the sense that I have been on YouTube for a very long time. I have struggled to define myself on the internet, and also pretty much everyone of Gen Z, or, millennials like Chris Stuckmann is, we're all going to be having a digital footprint. There's no way that any filmmaker now is going to, be recognized as just being a filmmaker. They're going to be that person that, had hot takes on Twitter on some film community or whatever. They're going to be people who did dumb videos on TikTok or YouTube, or, were an Instagram model or things like that. Like they're going to be having an online presence before they even get their first film out there. And, after seeing films like Smosh the Movie, or, what's that Shane Dawson movie, Not Cool? Whatever that train wreck was, we kind of expect YouTube films to be bad inherently, or, films made by YouTubers to be bad. And I think that Chris Stuckmann along with Markiplier, shockingly enough, if you've seen The Edge of Sleep, or the movie he's been trying to get a distribution deal for, Iron Lung, which I'm excited to see. I feel like they're breaking the mold, and I feel like we're starting to see a new era of cinematic voices. And as someone that is striving to be a part of that new era, I gotta say I'm very deeply inspired by this. I'm so deeply inspired to see a guy who I watched for years on YouTube and who I got kind of my earliest inspiration to start making YouTube videos make and release his first feature film in a wide theatrical release and have it be this genuinely good. Obviously, it's going to be derided by some people on the internet because people are assholes, but it's really fucking good. Honestly, if Chris Stuckmann can do that, if he can escape a Jehovah's Witness cult and build himself up just making, rather low effort movie reviews, just showing his love of cinema on the internet for years, and then finally make a movie, if he can do that, any of us can do that. Any of us can. It's hard. It's hard to do that. And the fact that he put his money where his mouth was and did this, and it doesn't suck, that's amazing. And it gives me a lot of hope for my future. It gives me a lot of hope for the future of my friends. Yeah, I'm just excited to see this next era of cinematic voices and everything that's to come from this. And that's kind of all I really wanted to say. I know this is kind of a ramble. I don't know if any of it makes much sense, but yeah, I'm also gonna be working on like a video about every movie I've seen for this October Halloween binge. I've seen quite a few. It's gonna be fun to do that video. Might be a tier video or a ranking video. I haven't quite figured it out yet. But be excited for that whenever that comes around. But yeah, you can follow me on all my social media sites. They're in the description down below. Subscribe. Like this video, and if you want to, check out my Patreon too. That always helps. But yeah, aside from all that, I don't really have much else to say, so be sure to keep a steady stride, and I'll see you all on the other side. Bye.